guys, it's Emma and I'm back today for you with another video, and today I am going to be doing a follow-up, alright? If you were here with me at the very beginning of the year, then you will have seen a video that I did talking about 2025 releases, particular 2025 releases that I wanted to read during the year of 2025. Well, I have read all of those books on that list, except for one, because Cleopatra is not actually coming out until next year. The stack is right here. I am just going to be going through what I did and did not like about them. Little disclaimer right here, if I happen to talk smack about a book that you like in this video, it's nothing personal. It's nothing personal whatsoever. My opinions are subjective, reading is subjective, and for some of these books I did not have a good time reading whatsoever. But for some of them, I really did have a very good time. Also, consider this video a really in-depth sneak peek to a video that I'm going to be posting early in January of next year, where I essentially go through every single 2025 release that I read, rapid fire, yes, no, maybe, with 5 words or less to describe how I feel about them, alright? I have been planning this video all year. I'm so excited to share it with you guys, and yeah, so look forward to that. Please look forward to that. But before we actually get started, I would really appreciate it if you guys had looked down in the description box for all the links there that I have for you guys pertaining to stuff going on in the world right now, and those links will be down there for you guys to interact with and to share. And then down in the comments, let me know whether or not you guys have read any of these books, whether you disagree or agree with anything I have to say about any of these books, what y'all's favorite 2025 releases are, the works. And I'm so sorry if the lighting changes. Throughout this video, the sun is playing peekaboo right now, so we'll just see how it goes. Nevertheless, let's get right on into it. Okay, so the first book right off the list that I read was the Starlight Heir by Amalie Howard. This is about Saara, who gets an invitation from the king in order to go to the capital to try out, okay, to be a bride for the crown prince. And when she gets there, she finds out that the invitation was not really to try and find a bride, but more so to try and find the Star Keeper, a girl who has the power of the stars in her hands. Meanwhile, Saara meets the crown prince and his very attractive brother. And all this time, the nobles and the rebel militia are like duking it out. And then one day, the rebel militia attacks, and Saara and the brother have to flee. And while they're trying to deny the attraction between one another, the brother is keeping secrets, Saara is keeping secrets of her own, as well as trying to keep control of this power that she has. I actively could not make myself finish this book. I DNF'd this book at 72%, and because I DNF'd it past the halfway point, I gave it 1 star. This book has amazing potential, but its execution is very, very bad. The writing style is very pretty, it's very fast, but the pacing itself is way too fast. This book can't sit with itself, therefore making almost everything in this book seem inconsequential. The setting descriptions and the world building are practically non-existent. Anything I know about this world is incredibly shallow, and it's the most basic parts of it, at the most. I have a pet peeve with fantasy books that kind of just slap a map at the beginning of the book and are like, okay, world building done. Girl, no.
Hate to break it to you, Angel.
Also, oh my gosh, why in a high fantasy book am I seeing 2014 Instagram slang? Why in a high fantasy book am I reading thick thighs save lives? Why in a high fantasy book am I reading goals? Why in a high fantasy book am I reading resting bitch face, spicy romance, book boyfriends? I think the worst transgression in just language used is when there is a sex scene in this book and the female participant refers to her virgin vagina as an untried passage. I was, okay, yeah. Just, this book, like I said, had so much potential, but the execution was just incredibly subpar. Just everything felt incredibly shallow. Next on the list, I read Mother of Rome by Lauren J.A. Baer. This is a Roman myth retelling about Rhea Silvia, who is the mother of Romulus and Remus. And essentially, she's kind of like a princess, or an equivalent of a princess to a degree. And when her father's rule is completely overthrown by a coup, she is sent to the Vestal Virgins to essentially live out the rest of her life in guarantee that she cannot ever have an heir, and therefore challenge the person person who just overthrew her dad, right? But she does get pregnant, and she leaves the Vestal Virgins, and she decides to, in order to keep her children safe, forge out her own path, and then someday get back what was stolen from her. I gave this book 2 stars. Listen, I would have given this book 3 had the last 100 pages not just tanked this book. You want an example of a book that just tanks itself? This book did not need this extra 100 pages. It really didn't. Because the last 100 pages of this book are such a slog, okay? And the pacing gets very odd. It's drawn out too much on certain parts, and then it whizzes by other parts, developmental parts particularly. For example, at one point, Romulus and Remus are suddenly 17 years old. The Sabine War, which actually lasted for 17 years, only lasts a couple pages. And we actually have a character who fights in the Sabine War, and I'm like, what? This is a revenge book. To try and keep it as spoiler-free as possible, because girl, if you gave me like an hour, hour and a half, 2 max, I could talk your ear off with how much a certain part in this book pissed me off. I really liked the writing style. I liked how most of this story was handled. Of course, not the last 100 pages, but even in the first like 75% of this book, there's this commentary on privilege because, of course, Rhea Silvia is the equivalent of a princess or something to that degree. And she's obviously had people dress her, groom her, feed her, give her wine. She's obviously had a palace roof over her head, let alone a regular roof just in general. And she constantly has these like eureka moments, but they never actually stick. Look, I would still recommend this book, but as far as retellings go, Atalanta by Jennifer Saint still sits at the top. Oh, I love it. The sun decides to go away. Yay, me. Okay, next on the list, I read Mask of the Deer Woman by Laurie L. Dove. Oh my gosh, thank you. This is about an ex-Chicago detective named Carrie Starr who is grieving the loss of her daughter, and in order to go and connect with her dad's roots, she goes back to the reservation that he was born on and raised, and she becomes the tribal marshal. And in doing so, she starts to investigate the numerous disappearances of the Native American girls from this reservation. And while on this investigation, she starts to be reminded of her daughter's death, and she catches a glimpse of Deer Woman, and she can't quite tell whether or not Deer Woman is trying to help her or get revenge on Carrie as well. I gave this book 2 stars. Before I say anything else, I feel like I just need to get this off my chest a little bit, all right? Just a little bit of weight off my clavicles. I like an unlikable character every now and then, all right? But Carrie Starr was fucking unbearable. She is a dog shit cop. She pulls a gun on an old lady because she got scared. Great. She's drunk or high in almost every single scene, including while she's driving and talking to witnesses. And going off of that, every single time, I cannot stress this enough, every single time she talks to a possible witness or an actual witness, she never listens to them. Because every single time somebody is talking to her about, oh yeah, no, I saw this person do this, or yeah, no, I saw this suspicious activity, she literally lets her mind wander for on and on and on. And then when she finally comes back into the conversation that she's having with an actual fucking person, they're done talking, and in her monologue, she's like, oh wow, I actually wasn't listening to that. And I'm sitting here like, bitch, I know! What is wrong with you?
This is the first time in my life that I've been provoked to hit a woman.
She even does this when the coroner is talking to her. She just felt so condescending and so patronizing every damn page. I hated Carrie Starr so much. The best parts about this book are the pacing, the fact that it was very, very fast paced, and the message that it's sending. The topic of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. Very important topic, does it very, very well, but everything else is not. A lot of plot points are very predictable. A shit ton of stuff just falls in Carrie Starr's lap, just out of sheer dumb luck, you know, because the bitch doesn't pay attention to anything. Carrie rarely felt like she even gave a damn about these cases that she was trying so hard to investigate. And when she finally did give a shit, it was almost too late. It's like, girl, where have you been? Oh, I just wish this book had been written so much better. Maybe Carrie Starr is supposed to be an unbearable human being, but in my opinion, there's a way to make unlikable characters still be readable. I would be willing to read another book by this author, but this book, this one right here, this was a miss. Next on the list, I read Blob, a love story by Maggie Su. This is about a woman named Vailu who finds a gelatinous blob one night in an alley, and drunkenly she decides to take it home. And this blob starts growing legs and arms and starts turning into a dude. And she's like, oh, well, you know, I could just make this blob my perfect boyfriend. And this blob slowly starts to gain sentience. I wanted to read this because I just thought it was going to be a weird girl book. And it definitely has the potential to be, but I wouldn't know. Because I DNF'd this at 53%. And because I DNF'd it past the 50% mark, I rated it 2 stars. I just right off the bat, before you take anything else I say about this book seriously, this book is not for me. I wholly admit that. The writing is incredibly fast and very easy to digest, but the story itself, coupled with this writing style, is very shallow. You never really get a grasp on anything. The pacing's also kind of disjointed, going very jarringly back and forth through these flashbacks between the past and the present. The idea for the story sounds cool, I just don't think the execution was as cool, okay? Just everything with the blob that happens just feels way too easy. I would understand if it's part of the story, but there's never like any sense of urgency or like consequence. I don't know, nothing was really engaging for me in this book. That's how easy everything felt. I would still maybe recommend this book. I thought it was kind of boring, but wholeheartedly, I understand this book just wasn't for me. The light! We finally have a break in the clouds, people, both figuratively and literally. Because the next book that I read off of the list from the very beginning of the year was The Rake, or The Orca Who Met His Match in a Selkie Desiring Revenge by Kass. This book, y'all. Y'all aren't ready for me to talk about this book, okay? This is a monster romance between a Selkie and an Orca shifter. And the Selkie, her name is Elspeth, and she escapes captivity, but she needs to go back and find and free her brother, who had been captured alongside her. And on her journey to try and find her brother's captors, she meets Heir, who is an Orca shifter, and they both team up to go and help find her brother and free him. I gave this 4 stars. Oh my gosh, what a breath of fresh air. Listen, the romance is just so good. I loved both Elspeth and Heir as characters. How both of them were developed as individual characters, and then their romance and the dynamic of their naturally shifting romance was just so well done. Y'all. For those of y'all who give a shit, okay? You want a dude who's down bad? I just can't get over how both Elspeth and Heir are done as characters. Heir felt very human and very raw, and then Elspeth's trauma I thought was very well done. Both the, of course, hard moments to read and the after effects, the quieter moments with her, you know, remembering and recovering. The writing is incredibly fast, and I thought this was very accessible to new readers. This is not the first book in a series. This is, I think, book 3, I believe. I actually don't quite know, but this is not the first book in a series. But this series is structured to where you can read the books as standalones, and a lot of times it is one of those things where it's like, yeah, no, you can totally read them as standalones, but they're still kind of confusing. This is not one of those books, okay? This is actually very accessible to people who kind of just want to read this one. With it being said, I didn't give it 5 stars. I do, in fact, have some gripes. 1, remember how Elspeth is trying to get her brother back, and in doing so, get revenge on the people who captured her? A very intriguing and very captivating plot line. However, that plot never really feels as impactful as it should, and I feel like it's emphasized by the fact that we never get basically anything from the brother. Also, gripe number 2, this book is filled with typos. Filled. If that doesn't bother you, great. But for me, it did. And then 3, why are there 2 epilogues? I love me an epilogue. But you really should have just made one and just had it switch from POV to POV, because that made the ending drag out a little bit too long. But nevertheless, oh my gosh, what a good monster romance. Okay, we're going downhill again, because this right here is one of the most disappointing books of the year for me, and that is Cursebound by Saara el-Arifi. This is the second book in the Feybound trilogy, and because it's the second book, I don't really want to say the synopsis because, of course, it is spoilery, and I gave it 2 stars. I liked Feybound, all right? I gave Feybound 3 stars. I thought it had a lot of potential to set the series up and for the series to do even better. So, naturally, I went into the second book thinking that it would be better. It actually just kept Feybound's problems and then contributed some of its own. Lettel, still fucking infuriating, okay? I don't get why everybody likes her. She is just completely selfish, and she has no regard for what her actions may or may not do for other people, considering the position that she's in this book. I also don't quite understand how everybody's like, oh yeah, no, Lettel's so smart. Lettel's so smart. How? Either she is smart and she's just written to be completely stupid because we just don't know how to get ourselves out of this situation writing-wise, but I don't think that's what's going on. I think everybody is just delusional about Lettel's IQ.
You just are not in touch with reality.
Euron and Fury's romance. I had such high hopes for their romance in Feybound. I was like, oh my gosh, these two, nah. But in this book, again, to keep it as spoiler-free as possible, they constantly are like, oh yeah, no, we have so much more than just death between us. We have love, we have companionship, and I'm sitting over here like, do y'all? Okay, because throughout this book, almost every single time they both have a conversation, it always ends in an argument, and one of them, no matter who it is, one of them always just ends up leaving, and the argument is just kind of left open-ended, and then they'll pick up a different conversation later once both of them have calmed down, and then resume the argument, because an argument always breaks out. And let me just say, if I knew either of these women in real life, break up with her. Break up with her, one, so you can get some emotional recovery, and also for me, so that I just don't have to hear about it, okay? And quite honestly, now that I've read Cursebound, I really don't know if like that thing, that caused the hatred between the two of them in the first place can really even be, fixed. Because I'm just saying, me personally, I hold grudges, and the grudge that would come from that would be Herculean. I loved how fast this book was. Compared to Feybound, Feybound at one point was a slog to get through. Cursebound definitely remedied that, because I flew through this book. But there were some instances where I'm like, okay, we're going really fast. It's like, oh shit, okay, are we not gonna like react to this like at all? Okay, no, okay, we're moving on. We've been zooming through all these pages, and it's almost like some things are happening too fast, and then some things are not happening at all. I found myself very, very disappointed with the things that, one, I wanted to be fixed in this book, and two, the things that I just wanted to happen in this book. I will, of course, be reading the third one. Saara el-Arifi is one of my favorite authors. What can I say? I'm hooked. I also just want closure, okay? And I want to see so badly if maybe the third book does anything cool. I mean, it's a cool world. It's an incredibly sick magic system. Saara el-Arifi just comes up with such cool fantasy ideas. I just want to see how the third book goes. I really do. Another break in the clouds, because the next book that I read on the list from the very beginning of the year was The Buffalo Hunter by Stephen Graham Jones. This is about a Blackfeet Native American vampire named Goodstab who is being interviewed by a Lutheran pastor. And in these interviews, we find out how Goodstab lived as a Native American, how he became a vampire, how he lived after he became a vampire. And these interviews also slowly uncover a slow massacre that left over 200 Blackfeet Native Americans dead in the snow. And we find out just exactly how that happened and how our Lutheran pastor may or may not have something to do with it. I gave this book 5 stars. This is one of the best books I've read all year. This is an amazing historical fiction horror, and it's like Western horror as well, and it's vampires, and it's very dark, it's very brutal, it's very graphic, it's very bloody, it's very gory. There's a lot of animal death in here. I really appreciated how the horror elements were done in this book, particularly since it's a horror Western. A lot of the horror elements have to do with the flora and the fauna, and of course, people. Considering this is talking about the, I don't know, brutalization of the Western United States, including its animals and people. This book is also very dense, which isn't to me a con whatsoever. It's just, I wouldn't read this on a rainy day. You know what I mean? Also because there are so many historical points and references in this book as well. And there's also such a twisted sense of irony in this book that honestly tore me the hell up every single time I remembered it. And I love all the different layers of storytelling that this book uses. This book is just so clever. If you are a fan of Western horrors, if you're a history buff, all right, I would seriously consider picking this up. This book is absolutely worth it. Next on the list, I read The Prince Without Sorrow by Maithree Wijesekara. This is the start of a new fantasy series drawing on inspiration from the Mauryan Empire of ancient India. You already had me hooked, okay?
But now you have my attention.
This follows Prince Ashoka, whose father is, needless to say, a fucking tyrant, and he rules the land with an iron fist. And when his father mysteriously dies, Ashoka is sent to govern a very tumultuous region, and nobody thinks he's gonna be able to do it. And so he has to prove them wrong, but at the same time, prove them wrong while not turning into his dad. And then at the same time, we also follow Shakti, who's a witch. And in this land, witches are persecuted and executed. And when she witnesses the murder of her aunt and other villagers of her village by Ashoka's dad, the tyrant emperor, she decides to get revenge. And not only to get revenge on the emperor, but to destroy the monarchy from the inside out. I gave The Prince Without Sorrow 3 stars. I really liked this book. First of all, can we please appreciate the cover?
This is art, Mr. White.
Guess what? We've got a map! This book is one of the most refreshing fantasies I've read all year. The world building, the map, the characters, the lore, the magic system, everything in this world, in this book, in this story is so fucking cool. I loved following Shakti, I loved following Ashoka and how their different characters are developed. The writing is so vivid and it's so rich. You genuinely feel like you are actually there every single scene, and it's so fast. You fly through this book. I just have one problem with this book, and that is that there is a plot hole, a glaring plot hole, at least in my opinion. Okay, to keep it as spoiler-free as possible, something magical and pivotal happens to one of our characters, and they don't know how or why they got this magical thing, and therefore neither do we. And this plot hole, why and how this happened to our character, is never explained. And it felt like this plot hole was kind of treated like, oh yeah, no, the character doesn't know why or how this happened, therefore we don't know how or why this happened, and yeah, it's kind of pivotal to the plot, and yeah, it does leave a lot of unanswered questions, but you just kind of have to get over that. Does it make it better that the character also doesn't know what happened? And it's like, no girl, it really doesn't. Because while this plot hole doesn't ruin the whole book, of course it doesn't, at the same time, this plot hole does, like I said, leave a lot of unanswered questions, and these unanswered questions do sort of contradict the world itself in a way, which I think is just such a shame, because like I've been saying to y'all, this world is so fucking cool. This book is so awesome. There's just this one plot hole that kind of shakes its foundations, and I'm hoping, okay, I know I was proven somewhat wrong, and oh, I'm getting a head rush. Read this book so that my head rush wasn't in vain. I am hoping that this plot hole will be resolved in later books, but nevertheless, I am so excited for book 2. I cannot wait to see where this story goes. Next on the list, I read Blood on Her Tongue by Johanna van Veen. This is set in the Netherlands in the 1880s, and we follow Lucy, whose sister Saara is not feeling well at all, and she's been diagnosed with a fever of the brain. And her sister's illness takes a turn for the hungry. And Lucy, seeing this, starts to think that something may or may not be possessing her sister. I gave Blood on Her Tongue 3 stars. I thought this was a pretty decent book. I loved the writing style of this. It's gothic, so you know it's gonna be dark. It's gonna have a lot of like high emotions, classic gothic elements. The writing is so pretty. However, at times it does feel a little modern. It's even, of course, got a house that feels like a sentient, looming presence over the story. The story was great. The way I was flying through this book, it's incredibly fast-paced. The only problem, to keep it as spoiler-free as possible, take a shot every single time I say that, there is something that happens in this book that is pretty pivotal to the overall story that I just plainly did not like. I didn't like it. I understood how it made sense to the story. It didn't do anything to the story that messed anything else up. The storytelling elements all made sense with this thing that happens. It's objectively, it's a good book. That's why objectively I rated it 3 stars. I try to keep my ratings as objective as possible. If I had been rating this based purely on my emotions, this would be 2. I just do not like whatsoever the thing that happens in this book. I just don't like it, but I can see how other people would. The biggest standouts of this book, the gothic elements, the writing, and the body horror. Was not expecting the body horror, y'all, and I was so pleasantly surprised. I would still wholeheartedly recommend this, particularly if you are yourself a gothic literature fan. Pick this bitch up. Next on my list, I read Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil by V.E. Schwab. This is a book about 3 different women from 3 different timelines who are all oppressed in some way, shape, or form. And they all find a way to freedom, but they're all having to grapple with the price of this freedom and what this freedom actually entails. I might be in the minority with this opinion, but I gave Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil 2 stars. This book was this book was monumentally disappointing. First gripe, and honestly the thing to start us all off, why on earth is this book so damn long? There's 3 points of view, sure. Quite honestly, I really only cared about one of them. I really wish this book had just been about Maria. That's where most of the interesting stuff in this book actually happens, is in Maria's point of view. We actually get explorations into the world building. We actually feel like kind of, you know, Interview with the Vampire. I was like, oh wow, this is cool. And then we'd get to the other points of view and I'm like, oh my gosh, okay, how long until Maria's? My main problem with Bury Our Bones is the fact that there is little to no plot, all right? And that is not inherently bad. But in order for a book without much of a plot or without plot at all to still be engaging, the other storytelling elements still have to pull their weight. And that is not something that happens in Bury Our Bones, all right? There is no plot and there is nothing to compensate for it. There are very little notable rising, climactic, and falling actions in anything else of the sort. Everything else that happens aside from this one very notable climactic point that happens pretty early on in each POV, everything else that happens afterward feels monotonous. It would be like the conversation where I ask you, hey, what did you do today? And you answered me back, oh, you know, I ran errands. Okay, instead of having that conversation, the monotonous tone of the lack of plot in this book feels instead like I asked you, hey, what did you do today? And you said to me, oh, well, at 7 a.m. I woke up. At 7:01 a.m. I stood up. At 7:02 a.m. I got up. At 7:05 a.m. I did my stretches. At 7:15 a.m. I left my bedroom. At 7:16/7:17 a.m. I took a shower. At 7:30 a.m. I scrambled some etc., etc., etc. This is monotonous. It is boring. This story talks itself to death constantly, all right? Because there is rarely anything big to anticipate in regards to the plot. And it is such a fucking shame because there is 530 something pages of it. There are some aspects in Alice's point of view that I just thought were lazy. Because she's set in the future, so she has all of this like vampire material to go back on, and that's pretty much how she finds out she's a vampire. The ending was also very anticlimactic. This book had such an interesting idea. The vampire biology, the vampire mechanics, the vampire lore, the world building in this book was actually so interesting. But it was all done in Maria's point of view. And Maria's point of view is only one of three. Of course, it's V.E. Schwab, so the writing style is going to be beautiful. It's going to be gorgeous. I loved the writing in this book. But if this book had just been about Maria, if this book had been shorter, I think the lack of plot actually would have worked. You know what I mean? The second to last 2025 release on the list from the beginning of this year is Lore of the Tides by Analeigh Sbrana. This is the second and the last book in the Lore of the Wilds duology. Because this is the sequel, I'm not going to tell you all the synopsis because it will be spoilery. But yeah, no, I DNF'd this book. Hated to do it. I DNF'd it at 59%, and because I DNF'd it past the 50% mark, I rated it. I rated this 2 stars. Wow. You remember how I was talking about with Blood on Her Tongue? There's an objective and a subjective rating for me sometimes. Lore of the Wilds was objectively a 2-star book, but it was still entertaining as shit. That's why I wanted to read the second book. So while Lore of the Wilds is objectively a 2-star book, subjectively it's 4 for me. I had a genuinely good time. Lore of the Tides, on the other hand, is both objectively and subjectively 2 stars. This book was not very good. This book did not need to be as long as it did. Our characters will be having full-blown, seemingly mundane conversations in dire situations. Like, for example, at one point they're literally having to sneak by enemies that will literally kill and eat them. And they're having regular volume, not whispering, they're having regular volume, fully like mundane, full conversations with one another. And I'm like, this is not the time nor the place. And it happens constantly. And they're constantly talking about, at least what felt like to me, the same things over and over and over again. I'm like, girl, we already had a tangent talking about this. Oh my gosh, can we talk about something new? So while Bury Our Bones talked itself to death, Lore of the Tides talked itself in circles. Not to mention, there are some pretty pivotal plot points in here that are told and not shown. We will fix something, right, that actively moves the plot along. And then the chapter will end. Then when you start the next chapter, you're thinking to yourself, oh, okay, I'm gonna see this thing be fixed. Like the process of it being fixed. No, this culmination of this big plot point will happen off page and our characters will tell us about it. It just makes these big plot points seem completely inconsequential. I tried to stick it out for the characters because I liked Lore. I liked Finn. I liked the characters in the first book. But these characters, it was like I got hit with like doppelgangers or something. Lore's decision-making skills are thrown way into question. It's like, girl, it put me in a position where I was like, was she this ditzy in the first book and I just didn't notice?
Is it me? Am I the drama? I don't think I'm the drama.
Finn growls everything. His only dialogue tag is growled. He growls this, he growls that. I still recommend, tentatively, Lore of the Wilds. I think it's still a fun little book, but I don't know if I recommend Lore of the Tides. I really don't. Which stinks, because Lore of the Wilds can't really stand as a standalone, so yikes. The last 2025 release on the list of particular 2025 releases I wanted to read throughout 2025, A Treachery of Swans by A.B. Poranek. This is a sapphic Swan Lake retelling where we have Odile, who has been trained by her dad pretty much all her life for this gigantic heist that they want to pull in order to steal the king's crown so that they can open magic use for everybody in the land. And in order to do so, Odile has to impersonate a princess, Marie. But when the king is spontaneously murdered, Odile may just have to ask Marie for help in finding out exactly what the hell is going on. And she's gonna have to choose the crown or the girl that she's slowly falling in love with. I gave this book 3 stars. While I thought it was entertaining, like Blob, I'm going to say right off the bat, I don't think this book was for me. The aesthetics of this book to me felt like the aesthetics from Bram Stoker's Dracula, the 90s movie. Obviously 2 very different age ranges. However, the costuming, the coloring, the contrasting of the colors, those were the aesthetics that I was getting from A Treachery of Swans. I do feel that the last third of A Treachery of Swans is the best part, because while I was never really bored throughout this book, while it was very fast-paced, the entire plot just kind of felt shallow. It was in the last third of The Treachery of Swans that things really started to shine, particularly the characterizations, particularly the plot, everything like that. The romance was okay. Again, the romance is another thing that really shines in the last third, all right? The last third was super romantic, especially like the epilogue. Oh my gosh, the epilogue was so bittersweet and romantic. I loved it. I just wish the rest of the romance had been like that, okay? Because we only get Odile's point of view. We never get anything from Marie, and because pretty much everybody, including Marie, forgives Odile so quickly for almost everything she does, it makes Marie look like a doormat. So I do recommend this. I just wish that the rest of the book had been like the last third. Ugh. So you guys, those were all of the 2025 releases off of that list from the beginning of the year that I wanted to read. I hope that you've enjoyed. I hope you will check some of these books out, because even though I don't recommend some, I do recommend others. And even though right in the middle, I don't personally like some, I do still see how they could be enjoyable to others. So really just, dude, see which ones you like. And if they sound up your alley, try them. You never know if you may find your next favorite book. Okay, so you guys, with that being said, I hope you've enjoyed. I hope you'll continue to look out for more stuff on my channel. I hope you'll particularly look out for that video that's coming at the beginning of January. You know, the one with all of those 2025 releases that I read, including these. Girl, I'm so excited for that. I hope y'all are staying safe. And lastly, I hope that you guys have a great rest of your day. Goodbye.